How well did I do? Roshan or Roshan?
Roshan.
Roshan! Alright, there we go.
Hi, so I'm Roshan, and I scare fish for a living. And that's actually true. I'm a neuroscientist, and I am really interested in how genes affect our behaviors. And so that's sort of a huge, huge question, and like, how do you go about answering it? And so I'm sorry for everybody here, even though probably some of you will like this, I'm a huge nerd, and so this is going to be a really nerdy, sciencey sort of story. But anyway, how do you answer these questions of genes and behavior? And so the way that you do that, or at least the way that I'm trying to do that, is you find sort of a simple organism and a really simple behavior, and then you try and figure out like how the genes affect it. Okay, and so the genes, the thing that I have focused on is this little fish called the zebrafish, which is found in like all sorts of pet shops that you might look at. You can always find them. They get stripes. That's how you know they're a zebrafish. So you take the zebrafish and then you find a really, really simple behavior. And the behavior that I focused on is called the startle response, or the escape response. And so basically, you scare a fish by making a noise, and then the fish turns away from the sound and then swims off. And every time you do this, they do the same thing. And so it's really nice because you can say, okay, this is a very like simple, regular behavior. They always do the same thing when you make a noise, and that tells you that they're scared and they're trying to escape from, somebody trying to smash them or kill them or, falling leaf, whatever. And so then the next step is we have this really like simple organism, simple behavior, and then we want to figure out what are the genes involved. And so the way that I'm trying to do that is what we call a genetic screen. And so basically what you do is you take fish and you put them in a bunch of water with a toxic chemical mutagen.
No
and
way.
then you hope that it induces mutants, and expect like, Spider-Man to come out of it, and like, they're gonna start glowing, they're gonna have like arms and stuff. No, not really. But sometimes you'll get fish with multiple heads. But that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is fish that have behavioral problems, and they have problems escaping or startling when we make a noise. Okay, so we do this and breed these fish for several generations, and then you look for these random mutants that I have created with my collaborators, and gotta put that out there. It's not just me. So we've created these mutants, and then you look for ones that have like very specific behavioral problems. And so I looked for all sorts of different things in this, and one of the behavioral problems that I looked for was for fish that are sort of hypersensitive. And so even if you give them like a tiny, tiny sound, they'll startle and do that exact behavior and run away, where normal fish would normally ignore you. And so we did this, and we got all sorts of mutants. And so then the cool thing, like as if that wasn't cool enough, the cool thing about this is that as a geneticist that's working in these zebrafish, or sometimes in fruit flies too, but basically you get to name the gene if nobody has studied this before when you've made these mutants. And so you can name it whatever you want, and you can be as nerdy and as obscure or whatever. And so so basically I wanted to name okay, to give you an example of the sort of nerdy name that comes out of this, is there's a gene that somebody found in fruit flies, and they called it hedgehog because these fruit flies looked all kind of like little and spiny. But then when people were studying this gene in other organisms, like in humans and mice, they found out that there was actually 3 copies of these genes. So they decided to name it 3 different types of hedgehogs. And the one that was the most important, they named Sonic Hedgehog. Yes. And you can search this online, and there's like all sorts of scientific papers on it. So I'm like, okay, I have to come up with really, really awesome gene names for my mutants that I've generated. And so the first mutant that we had that had this sort of like excessive escape response, we called Houdini, and obviously escape artist. But I wanted to like put it out there and show my like nerdiness, and so I wanted to reference Michael Chabon, which some of you maybe have heard of them. This is an author, and his Pulitzer Prize-winning book was The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Yeah. Awesome. And it's super nerdy and super awesome, and it follows these 2 guys in the 40s that are trying to fight the Nazis through comic book propaganda. And so they have this comic book character called the Escapist. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I have to name my mutant the Escapist. But wait a minute, maybe this is like actually copyrighted or whatever, and so I'm not sure if I can use this or not. But then I found out that Michael Chabon was actually speaking in Philadelphia. And I couldn't get tickets to see him. So I went to DC where he was also speaking. And I go, listen to it, he was amazing, and then wait in line for like 45 minutes to try and get up to talk to him about this. And so I get up, finally, and I give him this little spiel, 2 minutes, all of my like scientific knowledge that I know, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so amazing, and also I want to name this gene after your character, the escapist. And I'm sitting there like hyperventilating and like going, oh my gosh, please, 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 please say yes. And so then, of course, he's like, that would be the coolest thing ever, name your gene after me. And so I'm like, okay, this is score, and I start walking away, and he's like, oh, and also, my daughter really wants to study neuroscience. I'm like, oh, that would be amazing, and guess what? I have the perfect gene for her to study. Also, thank you for clapping, because that was my